David Brewster here in an episode of Chordplay. This is the Chords of Radiohead, and I've had some requests to feature some of Radiohead's music, which isn't really that surprising. These guys are very popular. And Radiohead formed in England in 1985 and went on to become one of the most popular bands of the 90s. In the 21st century, they're one of the most popular bands, period. So like I mentioned, Radiohead's very popular. They've sold over 35 million albums worldwide. They've had successful albums and tours and music videos and hit singles. And in the band, like in the guitar department, vocalist Tom York does play guitar, acoustic and electric, mainly rhythm. And then Johnny Greenwood is the lead guitarist, and he plays all these erratic and crazy, kind of melodic leads and little fills and riffs and power chords and stuff. And then Ed O'Brien is the other guitarist in the band, and he's kind of the special effects, player. He uses an EBow and lots of delay and these really ambient and unusual, guitar parts in their music. When I did the research for this episode, I learned something about Johnny Greenwood that I didn't know, and that's his growing reputation as a film scoring and soundtrack composer. And here's an image with some of the films and movies that Johnny Greenwood has composed, the soundtrack for. It's very impressive. While doing the research for this episode, I stumbled upon a bunch of old photos of Johnny Greenwood from the 90s, and I was reminded, I totally forgot, and it's like, oh yeah, he had like the Telecaster hair flip. So you don't have to play a Telly to play Radiohead, and you also don't have to flip your hair like this, but I just saw all these photos of him, using the same guitar, and almost in the same kind of hair flip pose, which I just thought that was funny. The music in this episode is going to come from 90s Radiohead, the early stuff, and that's when they were, kind of a full-fledged, rock band, and they still are a full-fledged rock band, but they've experimented and grown and changed, and they don't really have that same kind of raw, rock band kind of sound. Now they have all this lush, sequencing and strings, and there's keyboards and all this stuff going on. But I really like Radiohead back in the day when the guitars were kind of in the forefront or in the mix. And that's basically what we're going to hit in this lesson. We're not going to really leave the 90s. So here we go. All right, with the opening, that's the song Airbag, the opening track from OK Computer, and it's something like this. It starts with that big, opening riff, just single notes, and we're basically, cruising along the low E string, and you hear all that sliding between the notes, so that tells me it's just on one string, like this. Finish that riff, you actually end on A sus2 right there and let it ring. And then you hear him kind of roll the volume down. I'm also switching to a different pickup selection right there too, and that's going to happen a lot in this lesson. These little subtle changes, in the tone, whether it's the volume control, pickups, it could be effects or whatever. But just hit that A sus2 and let it ring. And then you're going to move to this. Starting with that, and that's going to be an A add 9 right there. Think of A major, but we're grabbing it like this. And that open B string is your add 9, because we're in A. So A add 9. And that's going to be followed with an A add 9 sharp 11, so that D sharp right there. And Radiohead does this, where they twist their chords, and I love that. where they just really maybe manipulate or change one note, but you hear the chord kind of, you know, mutating or changing while it's being strummed and played. So A add 9 and then A add 9 sharp 11. And then move that D sharp back to D, D natural, and then that's going to be an A sus2 sus4. And then you hear this. So he's kind of flirting with you know, A add 9 again with that open B up there. But it's also just playing a melody right there. But you know, I kind of hear those open strings in there too. And I'm just using the underside of my fingers and muting that G string, which that G's kind of muted out. Like that. So one more time with that part. Next up is the song You from Pablo Honey, and it's something like this. Like that, and I'm actually using the Phase 95 from MXR for that opening. I think it's actually like a tremolo or vibrato kind of effect, but I'm just doing it like that. So I'm kind of faking the effect because it is that swirly kind of tremolo or vibrato sound, and I'm just emulating that with a phase pedal. But right there, that's basically an implied, you know, E major and E7 right there, grabbing that D note. And then just grab that B right there, and then grab A. And there's a change in the time signature there too. And you hear the effect cut, and then it's just a ringing E major chord right there. And then switch it to E minor. Grab the high E and the open G. And then you're going to move to this C, this kind of C add 9 right there. And you're going to add that A note right there. And then it's like G, a G5, and also flirting with G major 7 with that F sharp. And then go back to that E major, E minor. Major to minor kind of twist, you know, with chords. There's a lot of A9 chords, you know, in Radiohead's music, and there's tons of this major and minor twisting. You're going to see more of that in this lesson, so that's a really cool example of that, though. Next up is Planet Telex from the Benz album, and it's something like this. basically, it does start with this kind of keyboard kind of intro, and then the guitar comes in, and you're basically twisting this B chord. So you're going to do a B sus4 to B major, B minor to B major. So there's that major and minor twist again. Answer that with an A5 and then an A sharp 11 to A major back to A sharp 11. And the first time you hear it go right back to that B again. And repeat that B twice. Moves twice. And then you hear this giant, cowboy E major chord. And then you hear it change to this, and this is really interesting. So that's E major 7. Don't play the high E string, but then you're basically playing the low E open, barring the 2nd fret there on the A and the D, and then the 4th fret on the G and the B. So think, E major 7 right there. And then you're going to change this D sharp to D, and then that's just E7. And then go back to E major 7 again. Interesting chords, and those are really unusual, but I like them. Okay, next up is the song Blowout from Pablo Honey, and it's this jazzy kind of fingerstyle thing like this. Chord, I've actually seen this written a couple different ways. I've seen it this way too. But I kind of prefer to play that opening chord this way instead of that way. Same chord, but that's E minor add 9 right there, another add 9 chord. And right there you're basically just changing the root note from C sharp to D. Some really interesting, chords right there. And I'm really just viewing that like the bass note walking back up, back up to E right there. And then just a G major to an A5. And then do that again. And then repeat the whole thing. Starts, there's a really interesting chord in the background, and that continues, and I think this is actually Ed O'Brien, but you hear him do this reverse rake chord, which is so dreamy and interesting like this. Really cool. And in the background, it's still doing this. And then you suddenly hear this really mysterious chord, and that's an E minor add 9 once again. Really interesting, voicing, because we're doubling that F sharp and then just, reverse strumming it like that. Okay, next up is the song Nice Dream from the album The Bends, and it actually starts with acoustic guitar and then moves into electric, and I'm just going to demonstrate all this on electric, but something like this. It basically starts with this. And talk about chord play. I mean, that's literally kind of the epitome of chord play right there. So we're starting with, think of a C major bar chord, but you want to open up the B and the high E. So there's C major 7 waiting right there. And then move that down a half step, and that's going to be a B add 11. And then move that down again, and it's going to feel like a B flat major bar chord, but the B and the high E are open. So that's going to be a B flat, flat 9, sharp 11. Really unusual. And then go down another half step, and there's A add 9. So C major 7, and then a B add 11, B flat, flat 9, sharp 11, and then A add 9. And he's just doing that kind of constant strumming like that. Change to this. That's basically A major and like a little piece of A sus2 sharp 11, like that. In the background, there's actually another guitar, probably Ed O'Brien, doing this. I'm just going to loop that with the TC Electronic Ditto looper. And then you hear this. The last examples from the song High and Dry from the Benz album, and basically it revolves around, as far as the opening, there's 2 guitars. And I'm going to show you the chord progression first, and then I'm going to loop that, and then show you what the other guitar is doing. So it's basically starting with this. And that's going to be an F sharp minor 11 right there. And then you're going to change that to just A sus2 right there. So really it's the same, basic chord, just change the root note. Change the root from F sharp to A, and that changes, F sharp minor 11 to an A sus2. Change to E major right there. So all those chords live, right next door to each other right there. F sharp minor 11, A sus2, and E major. And then do it again. A second guitar play this kind of octave melody, and I'm going to use the TC Electronic Ditto looper again. So here's the kind of strumming chord part, and then you hear the second guitar kind of come in, something like this. Right there, you're really just kind of tag teaming those chords. So there was the F sharp minor 11 in the background, and you're really just sliding into this G sharp and then back to F sharp like an octave. And I'm also hearing like maybe the high strings open in there, like that. And then you want to slide into that G sharp again and then end on E. That's going to match the A sus2 because E is the 5th of A. And then you hear it change to E, and you want to just stay on that E octave, but I hear the low E string in there too. guitar parts do that. They kind of come together and create this different sound or this big, picture, which is really cool. That's going to wrap this look at the Chords of Radiohead, and definitely a very interesting band, and I'm a fan. And it's one of those love-hate kind of groups, because I have some friends that love Radiohead, and they've seen them live multiple times. And then I have friends that absolutely hate Radiohead, and they don't like them. But I'm kind of neutral. I love music, so I never really shut anybody out or close the door on anybody. But I'm definitely a fan. I love this kind of progressive art rock kind of thing. I'm not really even sure what to call it. Progressive pop or post-pop progressive rock or something. I'm not really sure what to call it. But I like it. It definitely hits me on a kind of an emotional level. And that huge, atmospheric sound that they capture. And it just seems like you're floating around in space, when you hear some of their music, which is really cool. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to my lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.